That's cool. All right, I'm live. So I'm just gonna ramble until people start responding because sometimes people don't get these. And I don't do these live streams. I need to do these live streams a lot more. But I need to do these live streams a lot more. So um some people get the notification I do these live streams. I probably should have announced I was going live because some people are out and about. It is a Saturday. And some people are out and about doing what they're doing, so they probably don't even know I'm live. But I am live, and just wanted to let everyone know. So if you got any questions for ones that want questions, all right. Why body me a thing? What's up, Mark? Happy New Year! Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks. I hope you had a great. I hope your New Year is starting on well. It's been a blessed year for me. It's also been um, some trials and tribulations. We all have those. Lost some family and friends. We had some storms, but at the same time, as far as my studio and gear and all that, been blessed. So, hope you had a great Christmas, and hope your New Year is starting off as well. Um, this live section, like I said, I should let everyone know that I was doing it. But if you now's the chance, if you got any questions um, to ask. Um, but until people start asking, but a lot of people that probably saw my last couple of video uploads, I was talking about getting another console, and then everyone's like, "No, don't do that. Um, that might not be a good idea." People that have experience with consoles. If anyone know what's going on, C Black, what's up? Hope you had a happy New Year as well. Um, hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you had a great year. You know, uh, we all have ups and downs, bad, dealing with people, family, friends, or whatever the case. But I hope you had a great Christmas, and I hope your New Year is starting off well, and hope you're going to have a great New Year, whatever your plans are. Um, so, like I said, I was saying, I posted a couple videos about a console, and I know a lot of people have different ways they like to work in their workflow. Some people like the project setup way, where you have you just got your controller, maybe you have a beat maker or some stuff like that, your software, your interface and stuff like that. I'm a little bit more old school. I'm a little bit more old school because I kind of like the old console rack gear way of working. It's just the way I like to work. Um, oh, I mean, said, did you change the bulbs in your art preamps? No, they're still the stock bulbs. I did upgrade the tubes. I went and I've added these. I did upgrade to these. They are called Muller pull tubes. So I did upgrade the tubes in them. Didn't really. Um, did they influence the sound? Not a whole lot because like those art preamps and the art preamps I got in the rack, my other preamp, the circuits aren't really designed to give you what tubes do. And like my Avalon, you see my Avalon or my LA16, which is those are a transformer tube dependent type of circuit. So they do color the sound when you upgrade the tubes in those. But the tubes in those arts are designed to just give you a little bit more, kind of like a little bit of tube saturation on the back end. Um, so it's kind of that's what they're designed. That's why those preamps tend to be a lot more. They tend to influence the way the sound the preamps are going to make the mics or wherever you're running through them a lot more. That's why they're a lot more expensive. Yes, they're bulbs. Yeah, bulbs. I mean, you said it right. I sorry, I meant bulbs. Yeah, they're just the stop bulbs. I don't have any. If you're talking about when you turn it on and the bulbs are, like if you bought the same unit, it would look that way. I have all my stuff looks still stock as far as the bulbs, but um, oh, Eric says, oh, he's asking a question. Why would you need an audio mixer if your recording software has one? Well, here's the thing. You got to remember, it's the mixer in your software. It functions like a mixer, but it's still, when the audio is coming out, it's coming out through your interface. The mixer itself, if you think about it, you can, unless you got 3 or 4 screens, and I think this is why a lot of people starting to choose to, get DAW controllers. Some people get a 1-channel fader port. Some people get an 8-channel, 16. Some people get 24, or the Behringer X Touch, or the, some people want more than one fader, but they actually want to touch faders on an actual, something like this fader port. You and I know, like, when you're actually touching the fader and turning the rotor knobs and hitting the transport button, you can feel that. You can't feel that when it looks virtual on your screen. But it's but you got to remember, some people say, well, this actually makes sound. There's actually real preamps in these consoles. There's just like with the EQ. When you adjust EQ, it's an actual real EQ. So sometimes when you're running your sound through a console, all that affects the sonics. It's like, the best way I can describe it is, you want to hear the sonic difference. This is probably a studio recording secret. You want to hear the difference in your audio interface. Get 2 identical preamps. You can get channel strips, like, let's say a pair of those ARC channels, or a pair of the, whatever. Just get a couple pair of them, one for stereo left and stereo right, and run the signal from your interface through those preamps, and then the output for you to actually to your speakers, or whatever the case, even for final printing. And what you're doing when you do that, you're getting the characteristics the same way as when they run it through a commercial studio, like if they had an SSL console or an API or Neve or whatever. Just like I get the same sonic characteristics when I'm running through the master out of this Allen and Heath. It's the same, and you will hear the difference, and you'll see why. Now you'll see why big studios, like, if you ever do studio tours like Blackbird, or Ocean Way, or you'll see why it sounds like they do when they run it through those consoles. You're getting basically the same effect. So that's why. Oh yeah, Widebody says, I am the same way, Mark. I have a mix in the studio. And I'll tell anyone, I'll challenge like this, because there are a lot of people, which is a good thing. If you want a mixer, I think mixers are like, are a big essential part of your sound. A lot of people may not understand that, but it is a big essential part of your sound. But if you want to hear something, I know some people will have their setup where they'll have just their DAW, their audio interface, and just the tools they're using, and they'll run the speakers from the interface. Challenge yourself. This is not a very expensive challenge to do. You can go buy yourself a little Mackie 12-channel, or a little Behringer, or a little Yamaha, or even Allen Heath. This is a small mixer. Take the output of that from your interface, run it through those mixer, and then run it through the speakers, and listen to the difference. And I promise you will hear difference. And the wife said, yeah, I love both worlds. I love the hybrid mix. And that's basically whether it's a studio mine, whether you watch Warren Hewitt produce like a pro, or home recording studio, or Recording Revolution, or whatever. If you watch, because I know people watch more than just my channel. If you watch a lot of these guys that got set up, especially whether they're using a large console, or they're using whatever the case may be, or if you just look at all the top studios that are still up and running, whether it's Electric Lady, whether it's Ocean Way, or Blackbird, or whatever, and these consoles, they're hybrid, because the only thing that eliminate what makes it hybrid is we're not recording to 2-inch tape anymore, or I'm not using my ADAT, which is really a digital, audio digital converter to tape. It's the actual acronym. That's what ADAT stands for. Analog, which is audio digital to analog tape converting, something like that. That's what ADAT stand for. But it took VH tapes, Super VHS tapes, and even though it's a tape, the information on it is actually digital. Then the converter will convert it back from digital back to audio out the output of the ADATs. But that's what you're doing. So the studios are pretty much doing it by running into an interface, I don't care what interface they're running, Burroughs, Avids, Apogees, Lynx, Antelope, like I got an Antelope. And that's going to the computer. That's an interface. That's how they're doing it. So everyone's pretty much hybrid to a point. It just depends on how much, unless you're just completely just doing everything like running everything like software like Reason. Reason is a complete in the box. Well, in the box, basically in the computer. We like to say in the box, but it's really in the computer. I'm old school. Change an acronym from ITB to ITC because that's what we were doing, and we're in the computer. But Reason is a software where you got all your instruments. It's got the mixer. It's got the effects. You got everything in there. You can do everything, and I think that's awesome. Way to work as well. I have Reason. I have an older Reason. I have Reason 11, but it's still Reason. That's one way to work, and I play around with that software as well. Some people may think that they see my setup like, well, you look like you're leaning more old school, and I am old school. But don't get it twisted. I do play around Reason. It's the reason why I got an MPC Renaissance and studio, and I still be making beats and everything else, So let me answer some more questions. If Def gives the recording more character using a mixer and outboard gear without it, he says it definitely gives the recording more character using a mixer and outboard gear without a doubt. That's the reason why I have what I got. I've tried it. A lot of people, if you don't know, I started doing this back in 1994. Yeah, I'm old. You probably look at my hair. My hair got some gray. Yeah, I started, and I've tried so many different ways. I got a little small set downstairs in my dining room where all I got is just I got just a little, my Arturia Keylab, my laptop. People probably, if you watch my studio tour, I did that tour and I started with there. And I recorded some software into Studio One and also into Harrison Mixbus. And I added a little Behringer mixer to that because I'm using JBL monitors. It enhanced it. It just running through that little small mixer made it sounds better. So but I've been working on consoles and studios since I started working in studios. I mean, the first one we started was a Tascam M520 analog console. I worked that way. Analog consoles sound good. This is the reason why your top studios, they still have an SSL or a Neve or an API or an Audient. They still have large format consoles. And there are still people out there still buying consoles because consoles, the enhancement to your mixes and everything but I know a lot of people I don't have a room for something like this. And this is my bonus room, but it fits. But like I said, when I was doing the video about looking at this other console, if y'all watched it, that other console I was looking at, the size of it really wasn't my issue. Even the weight wasn't my issue. The weight, my problem with it was an older console working on older software. And the old software has to work for the console to work. And if it doesn't work, because it was new digitally controlling analog it was new. But I definitely know what consoles do to your sound. That's why I won't work without one. Some people have even mentioned, get a digital mixer. I have digital mixers. The church I play at has a digital mixer, has a Personas Live. I have an older digital mixer. When I was touring with the band in the 2000s, we used that same type of digital mixer, so I know it. That's why I own one. But digital, when I'm working with, because a digital mixer is based on AD to DA converter. You may not think it is, but it is. That's why it's a digital mixer. When you say digital, it's binary. I've tried lots of ways, and I just don't. If everyone knows me by now, I am an old school R&B guy. Even though I play gospel a week because I'm a church musician as well. But I am an old school analog, so I'm still like having bass guitars. I still like having guitars. I still like having, synth sounds in there, and drums for the most part. I don't do a whole lot of experimenting with a lot of samples, or because it's just because of the music I do. But that's just me. Now Patrick Green, Timothy, hey Mark, what are your thoughts on the Behringer Odyssey 37? I don't know. I've never researched it. I don't know anything about it. And whenever someone presents gear and they give me thoughts on it, I have to go research on it and look at it to see, the specs on it, what it can do, and so forth. Because actually, I'm going to ask y'all a question, because I just came across something. I've seen this in someone's studio, but I just never really thought about pulling the trigger. And I said, that might be a different way to work. And basically what it looked like, it was the Avid Icon controller. Now, some people say that that's an DAW controller, but it's like to me, it looked like a DAW controller on steroids, because it looked like the same size as my Allen and Heath here. It was pretty big, but it's basically had all the controls of a mixer, but it was one of these in a nutshell. And I was thinking how that might be interesting, because in the end, I like the workflows of working on the console. I like being able to move faders. I like being able to turn an actual EQ. I actually like being able to send something to auxiliary send and send it to a bus, or I like touching I like physically touching something. And it feels more tactile to me doing it that way. I like that workflow. I'm not really big on the mouse thing, even though some people can work that way, even though I know shortcut keys and use the mouse. I just don't really like using the mouse, because I really can't get the feel. I can see if I'm turning a rotary knob on like an EQ or something, I can see it physically moving, but I like feel. That's why I have actual gear. So that's my thought on it. So I was looking at this Avid controller. So that might be interesting, because I'd still have to go through, like we all do. We all got to go through an audio interface to get into our DAW. And also, of course, when we're recording to our DAW, when, the audio, we have to use an interface. So we all do that. So our sound is not the DAW. Let's get that straight. Your sound is not the DAW. Your sound is your AD to DA converter. Even though you can, we can put a mass amount of plugins, a mass amount of, whatever, Pro Tools, Ableton Live, Reason, Reaper, Pro Tools, Cakewalk, whatever you like to use, and whatever plugins you like to use. It only sounds as good as the AD to DA interface converter that you're using. So that's really what it boils down to. In the end, we're using that. So let me answer some more questions. So Eric says some recording software has a remote app for your mixing. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people like the new, I think that's the UF8 or the UF1 or something like that. The Softube has a controller. SSL has their controller. There's a few controllers. I think one is called the SSL Nucleus. Icon. I can even control quite a few things. I can control quite a few parameters. Both of these can. Like if I'm in Logic, because this one has, I wish all the, I'm gonna tell you what would be killer. Like I got my Arturia Keylab, and we'll see my Arturia Keylabs. I got 3 of them. I wish if they gave these MIDI controllers, because you know when I'm playing keys, but I also have all the functions of the pads. You got your encoders, the faders, transport. The only thing that all these don't have, that one thing that Behringer thought of that was killer, is this has motorized moving faders. So I wished, and it works seamlessly in Logic Pro. When I'm sitting here on the Mackie and I'm playing around with Logic Pro, this works seamlessly. The automation works seamlessly. And I wish all MIDI controllers came with motorized faders like that. Because automation, if you know about mixing, automation is part of the mixing, so you can bring up certain levels of volumes when they need to. It's not you don't set levels and forget. That's why when I'm sitting there, I'm constantly making vocal adjustments and stuff like that. That's what was a key. Well, that was why the SSL, like an SSL 4000G or an SSL 9000J or whatever, those consoles, or even the Neve that they got, called flying faders, was such a popular thing for mixing in the 80s and 90s, because the faders moved. So the mixing engineer didn't have to depend, because before they could come up faders, you had 3 or 4 people at the board. You would have one guy, he's sitting there controlling the faders for drums. And you had to do that when a drummer, because the drummers themselves, they don't realize their volume levels because they get into the mode. When you're playing drums and you start, you're playing drums and you're doing all this, you forget volume. Some drummers are really, really good and cognizant that they say, yeah, I can do all this, but I still got to know I got to maintain volume control. But most drummers forget that, because you get into the zone. So when it's recorded, now the engineers have to be like, they're sitting there doing this. Well, now with automation, and it's great, thank God, Pro Tools, Cakewalk, or every DAW can do automation, so you can set your automation. And even with that, you'll see where the fader starts moving by itself, so you can make adjustments. It's making adjustments. That's part of mixing, as well as panning, because the panning creates the stereo effect, whether it's going to sound like it's in the center or it's spreading wide based on how you pan. Volume levels also makes the stuff sound up front or in the back based on the volume level. Panning makes it sound wide, and of course EQ makes it sound, it's a stereo image. But anyhow, I didn't get into that. So Widebody says, I had a GL8, a GL3800, had to get rid of it when I changed the houses. Was a great piece. Yeah. If you can get it back. And a lot of people thought when I was looking at, because this is a GL3000, it's a 48 channel GL3000. Well, I wanted a GL4000 because there's only a couple of things that I don't. There's really only one thing I don't like about this console. One thing I've owned in it, and this is the reason why I was still looking at other consoles. The high and the low, not the mid-high and mid-low, because the mid-high and the mid-low are sweepable. The high and the low are fixed. So the high is fixed at 12. So that you can see it in camera view. Or I can always do this. I can always move the camera that way. Yes, that way when I'm touching the console, you can see what. The high is always fixed, and the low is fixed. My nose, it's right here on my edge. Not me, I'm telling a lie. It's the truth. The high is fixed, and the low is fixed. So this is fixed at 12K, and this is fixed at 80. So you could only boost or cut that frequency. And so the downside, it looks awkward when I got the camera that way, but so the downside is a lot of times when I need more EQ control, because the EQ at those fixed frequencies still sound good, but sometimes you need more EQ control than those particular frequency bands. Itch. So pardon me for that. Great thing about the mid-high and mid-low is those are sweepable. I can sweep it whether I want 500 or 1,000 or whatever on a low, or 2K or 3K on a mid-high or whatever, and I can sweep it and I can boost that. What's great about the SSL, this is why they're always adamant about the SSL plugin channel strip. What they've done in that channel strip, just like any other channel strip on EQ channel strip, is give you flexibility to not only sweep those, they can also, you can actually do the bandwidth. But if you ever look at an SSL EQ, the great thing about an SSL-Q is not only can you boost the high and the low and sweep it, you can also change the bandwidth, Q, make it, give it a narrow band, or you can get a wide band, which will also, is almost like making someone, let's say in the mid-range, and someone sounded like this, you can actually, something sounded MIDI like this, something really MIDI, you can take that bandwidth and you can spread that bandwidth out to give it a lot more widening in that area by widening the bandwidth, because now you got a multiple of frequencies working in that frequency area, between, let's say you want the bandwidth between 500 up to like 2K. All those bandwidths will be affected based on the bandwidth. That's why parametric EQs are so much more used in like notch, which is like a graphic. A graphic EQ is basically notch filters. They're fixed frequencies. A 15 band or 12 band or 20 band EQ have nothing but 20 fixed frequencies that you can only boost or cut. You can't really spread the width of that to give it a more narrow sounding frequency. So that's why I like about console. That's why I wanted a 4,000, because the high is sweepable, the mid high is sweepable, the low is sweepable, and as well as the low. You can really change some tones when you're working with your EQ. The only thing I don't like with the ML 5000 is because it doesn't have TSR line inputs. It has XLRs, which is perfectly fine as a balanced cable. But soundbars have put Vocal Rider. I don't know what a Vocal Rider is. Unless you're talking about the person that's been messing with the levels. But why asked me, do you mess with Arturia Keylab V Collection? Yes. Arturia Keylab, Analog Lab 5. Yes. Matter of fact, the last Christmas album I was working on with this artist, I used the grand piano. I used the grand piano from Arturia Keylab as the piano, because that piano, those grand pianos are some of the best grand piano sounds. They're better than all the keyboards I got as far as grand pianos. Is that Arturia Keylab grand piano plugin from Arturia Keylab? So that's one of my favorite. I do have other ones, other plugin. I do have other plugin virtual instrument, plug-in VSTs for piano, but that's one of my favorites is that. So let's see, do we have any other questions? That other than that, so far, like I said, I need to start doing these live streams a lot more. And I promise that for 2024, I was going to start doing a lot more live streams. I was looking at the clock, yeah, okay. I was looking at the clock there. I was going to start doing a lot more live streams because it gives me a chance to answer people's questions right then and there as they post it in the chat. I think that's better sometimes than sometimes people will write responses. They'll write responses, and I can't answer them until I get a chance to answer them, because when I'm at work or when it's, sometimes people write something at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm already asleep or whatever the case. So other than that, so I'm just here to answer questions. Oh, DJ Victor asks, what was your favorite VST for 2023? You know, on my, if you, I actually have a, I don't have one particular one. I actually have two that I like, that I found myself using the most. I love the Analog Lab 5, and I also like the Korg collection because I'm a big Korg, you know, even though I have the Korg Triton Studio, it is convenient for me to use the Triton Studio VST software right here and the controller. That way I can directly record right in the DAW, instead of actually running, plugging it up and going to the console. But those are my two, because it also has the Korg Triton Extreme. It has the Korg M1 in there. It has one of my favorite VSTs also is the Korg Wave Station, because it's got some off the chain sounds in that. But Arturia Keylab, I was using the Synth Anthology, and I still play around with it from time to time, but I don't use it as much. And now when it comes to other VSTs, if it comes to like processing, like compressors, EQs, I actually, believe it or not, there's quite a few free ones I like the Lufticus. It's called Lufticus, I believe. Lufticus is a free plugin. There's a website called 200 or 250 free plugins. I get some of those from there, like there's one called Analog Obsession. You can get quite a few nice free plugins from them. I also use, I definitely like IK Multimedia's. That's the reason why I bought their T-Rack, their whole complete collection of plugins, because they were one of the few companies that actually modeled their plugins after a lot of gear. I do have Slate. Slate's plugins are basically, they're modeled after 500 series, but I've messed around with some of the Slates. And this, I'm trying to think, I'm drawing a blank on some of these other plugins. But the Acoustica Audio's plugins are off the chain to me, but they're processor heavy. You better be running, like this Mac I got is 32 gigs of RAM for a quad processor. You better be running something like that to use Acoustica Audio plugins, or they will. I noticed that I'll start getting popping issues and all that. I use it. I'll set it. Sometimes I use like the Acoustic Audio plugin on my master bus, and then I'll print through it because it's just processing. I'll set the, if I'm using the EQ or compressor or whatever, I'll set it, print through it, but I won't run the audio so it doesn't clip and pop. And I know some people are like, well, you just need a faster computer. Yeah, I probably do. Those are my favorites. I would say Acoustica Audio, IK Multimedia, some of the Slates. I haven't really been using Waves a lot. I used to use Waves a lot, 20 years ago, a lot heavy, because Waves was a leading VST company. But I don't really use a lot of Waves now. Like I said, for keyboard virtual instruments, I like VIP because that came when I got the M-Audio controller, and it's got a whole lot of plugins. But some of those plugins are just so, they be making these serious digital synth analog type of patches. I'm like, I can't really use that. And believe it or not, here's some plugins that I like that you really can't get anymore. I get plugins that emulate old gear, like the OB3A, I believe it OB3A, or the Oberheim 3A or 2. I can't remember the name of the plugin. I like plugins like that, to play around with them. So just it really depends, but those are my favorite. As far as mixing and processing, Acoustic Audio, IK Multimedia, some of Slate's. I have a mixture of plugins, but keyboard plugins and virtual instrument plugins. I've even used that some bass modeling programs for bass guitar, but I normally just play the bass parts for the most part. But keys, for the most part, other than using like the chord collection or the Analog Lab 5, people know, they see me. Most of my sounds come from my synths. So that's what so it really depends on it really depends on what I'm trying to capture and what I'm trying to do. Any more questions? We've been going for 35 minutes. So it's the amazing mastering plugin. And I'm gonna tell you, T-Rax, because that's what I use for my mastering software, is T-Rax, right? T-Rax is just some people may not agree because other people like to master. But T-Rax got some serious. It's one of my favorites. Even for mastering, when I use T-Rax as a mastering suite. And they got one called the One. I mean, everything from doing I don't know, do I have T-Rax on my, I know I got T-Rax on my PC I'm using to do my live stream. I'm about to see if I got T-Rax. I'm almost positive I got T-Rax on my Mac here. Let me if you're not familiar with T-Rax, let me see if I can't pull up. Let me see. Oh, Logic, yeah, because I changed my interface. So Studio One may or may not. We'll see. It may not recognize this interface sometimes because I changed my interface. I was using the Behringer. Yep, there it is. MIDI configuration change. This might do the removal plugin. Do you want to reconnect? No, I'm gonna have to, because I got Motu's interfaces down here for my Mac. I use my analog interface for my PC and I use my Motu's for my Mac. It's just easier for me. And eventually I'm probably gonna get another analog for my Mac. So let me go in here in Studio One and let me go and I'm gonna go and see if I can't change this to Motu's. There we go. One thing I love about Mac is, and what I love about Mac software is that it recognizes stuff that you plug in a whole lot easier than PCs. That's why I've been a PC user for years, but I'm slowly navigating over to Macs. And there's probably, I bet you a lot of y'all use Macs. And I was a diehard PC, but I can see why people like Macs. They just, it seems to, for music production, and I think this is why all top studios use Macs over PC, because they work better for video, for photo editing, for music software than PCs. And don't get me wrong, for people that are PC users, I'm a PC user. But sometimes PC starts to crash, or sometimes software gets corrupted, or whatever the case. There's just different type of issues that you can run into. So I just changed it. I just changed it from, because I was using the Behringer to the Motu's, and it, bam, like that. It's like plugged in fire, bam, like that. And that's what I love about Macs. I'm going to try to insert to show you at least what it looks like. It's called the One. Just to show you what it looks like if you're not familiar with this. Here we go. PC the One. Okay. I'm gonna bring my camera over here. So I know that's not a great angle to see, because I know next time I do this live stream, I'm going to actually use OBS over so I can swap scenes. I'm going to do that when I got a master OBS studio. But some people say there's Pro Performer and other streaming programs and live programs that actually work better than me just live streaming through OBS Studio. So I'm eventually gonna switch to that. So this is called the One. Like I said, it's not the greatest. It's not the greatest angle, but it has, what I love about it is not only have your volume and your push, you can have this knob to give it a little bit more air. This knob gives it a little bit more flow, a little bit more body in the music, a little bit more bass punch. Give it a little bit, to bring the transients through a little bit more. It gives you a little bit more of an analog, a little bit more widening. It's an all-in-one tool. This thing is a beast of a plugin for your master. It is a beast of a plugin. When I was using other programs, I had some software like that. It's almost like, people, if they've seen, let me bring the camera back. Okay. If you've seen like a Shadows Hill mastering or the Manley Pass EQ and stuff like that, IK Multimedia has software that looks like that, emulates the gear like that, but that One is off the one. It's off the chain. So I love that, along with Acustica, because I got Acustica audio plugins on here as well. If you're not hip to this EQ, let me see if I can pull up Acustica Audio's EQ on here too. I'm gonna close this out. Here we go. Aqua. It's called, Amethyst 4. Okay. Here's another one. I don't know if you can. This is like, once again, that's not a great angle. I know that's crappy. From the camera's perspective, but you get the idea. It's got the preamp section, the EQ section, your compressor mix, and your final out, input and out. I put along with that One and that on my master. That, let me tell you, you want your stuff to that plugin from Acustica Audios is fire. I'm telling you, that is. So if you want to, so people think that if you think I'm just using just the console and outboard gear only, and I'm not using plugins, I use a combination of both, because that's how everything sounds really good, because plugins are really good. So, okay, somebody says, how often do you use the console behind you? Meaning, do you use it just for mastering? Actually, believe it or not, the console is more for signal flow and warmth to the signal more than anything else. Because one person asked me earlier, why don't I just use the mixer of my console? Why don't you use the mixer of my console compared to why don't I use this? Well, when I bring in something like, when I bring drums and that snare and the hi-hat and the toms and I'm bringing bass, keys, all that, vocals and all that across all these channels, you can hear it through the speakers. Versus, a lot of times when we work in our computers, what we call it working in the box, and you're listening to the stereo master output coming out of left and right of your interface going to your speakers, you're only listening to the stereo. You can hear some widening and all that, but it's really present when you have everything come to the console. That's why I chose an analog interface in the first place, because it has 32 outputs. So I can put my drums and visually put my drum on this channel, and I can literally use the EQ. I can do inserts with the gear, as well as the combinations in the software using plugins. I also use the SSL bus compressor as well on my master. I have a mastering chain, and I use that to print my master when I come out through the master here to print back for the final. That's how I'm able, and I'll do a demonstration of I'll do a demonstration. I had to do a demonstration so people can hear it. I started to do a recording process, and then some things happened. I didn't get a chance to do it. I'm going to do it so you can hear how I do everything from A to B, so that way it sounds like a commercial studio recorded product, you know. So he said, hey, thank you for the music content, and thank you more for your service, man. God bless. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. 24 years in the Army. Yeah. Some of that was in the reserves, but still, that all counts, right? Oh, DJ Victor said TR5 Stealth Limit. That's a good plugin too. I mean, I'm a hardcore IK Multimedia acoustic audio, and I use some free plugins as well. And I got over 1,000 over here. You know, Slate got some off the chain plugins as well. Their plugins are beasts too. So if I want to do because everyone knows my effect processors are your traditional reverbs, delays. Excuse me. They have some flanging, you know, just your basic. But if you want some unique stuff, like I do use plugins like doublers and just unique sounding plugins that you don't have in gear. That's the reason why I said there's no one way to do this. Anyone that does this strictly just using analog and not using plugins, you're missing out. And anyone that just does this plugins and don't have outboard gear, you're missing out. It's a combination of both that makes everything sound good. So there you go. And then Seven Sun, that's one of my favorite plugins. Yeah, it works. Seven Sun Music knows that the acoustic audio, IK Multimedias, and if you play around with plugins are awesome. That's why I don't understand anyone that's don't want to use plugins. You don't know how. The stuff that you can do to vocals. Whether you want to get vocoder sounds, or you want to get these flanging or these reverse sounds, a lot of gear, unless you're going to buy about 50,000 racks of processors, which most people don't. I have more compressors and preamps than I do a bunch of effects, because I use a lot of plugins for effects. So yeah, Victor said another great one. Sorry, I made to butcher your name. Andre, I got a PC and I don't have those issues. Plus, my system is optimized for music production. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I usually, when I go back, let me clarify on the PC. I've been using PCs for years. I rarely have issues, but you occasionally can have an issue. And every now and then, every blue moon will lock up, or something like that, or pops and jumps and whatever. For the most part, 98% of the time, I have zero issues. But I'm not using a ton of plug-in processing either. I'm using a combination of a lot of going through outboard gear. Like when I run vocals for compressors, I actually use real outboard gear compressors. Simply because part of that is electronics. Electronics is big to your sound as well. But I've noticed with Macs, they just work better to me. They do. I'll defend PCs all day long. I will never stop using a PC. But I gotta be honest. They work well, and I can see why people use them. That's why I both have a Mac and a PC. There's no rule that says you have to be one only. You can be both, But the biggest for PC, I noticed, if you have to, at least if you upgrade your processor and RAM, that definitely helps a PC. If you got a PC only 8 gigs of RAM with a 2-core processor, you might want to go 4-core processor and at least 16 gigs of RAM. That will clear a lot of issues. Let's see. DJ said, I don't use a console, but I believe you get more life out of your music when you stop looking at the monitor. And here's the thing with the console. The biggest thing, and this is, and y'all probably noticed this and watched this and seen this. When you watch studio tour, let's say you go back on you stop the podcast. If you've never seen these tours, go watch these tours. Let's say you go watch Warren Hewitt. Warren Hewitt, Produce Like a Pro, he did a lot of studio tours. Or you go back and watch, there's other people that do studio tours. There's Andre Masters. He does studio tours. There is, then there's just videos of people just doing studio tours of iconic studios like Fame Recording Studio out of in Alabama, or you can't really see a whole lot electrically, or you don't see a whole lot of Patchwork, or you'll see even Patchwork out of Atlanta. Patchwork out of Atlanta, even though he's probably one of the biggest hip hop recording studios in the Dirty South, Atlanta, has a phenomenal $10 million facility, and he has SSL consoles and all that. He still has what we consider a studio that can do a rock band or an orchestra. He still has that, but yeah, most of his clients are everyone from. He has clients everyone from. He had them from everyone from TLC to Beyonce to Ludacris to Jay-Z. I mean, almost a whole 9% of your hip hop top artists have went to Patchwork, but he still has an SSL console. He still has outboard gear. And they probably are not even using half them channels on those large format consoles. But the biggest thing, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because when I'm mentioning those studios like that, whether it's Blackbird out of Nashville or Treasure Isle or whatever, most of those guys that have studios are catering to rock bands, country bands, or bands. If you're not doing hip hop, or if you're not doing that kind of music, rock or country, the most important aspect is your front end. Once you got it and recorded to the DAW, you can start mixing all your plugins right there in the DAW, and then you print your final master, and you're ready to upload and get it distributed. But those guys, they focus because a lot of guys there are still thousands of rock bands and alternative bands. Most of these people are independent. They're unknown. They're local bands or local groups or local artists that you've never heard of because they're not signed to a major label, or they're just not well known. But they still record the traditional way. I'm going to still run through a console, a monitor console, still doing preamp. But that you don't need a console. Your console is really generated if you want the console sound and you want to enter in your workflow. I like console flow. I like console sound in my workflow. To me, it just enhances. But you don't need it. You can record straight into your interface using the preamp. You can use your interface preamps. The most important vocal sound, and like if you do hip hop, most of the time, most of y'all are probably use something like this MPC Renaissance. I heard something go, I don't know. Sometime when you hear as long as it don't affect my recording. And so I'm still recording. So it says I'm still live. It didn't stop. Yep. So I'm still recording. Long as it doesn't affect. So I can take samples, create beats. The most important thing I would need to get right in hip hop music, if I'm going to do some hip hop, is the vocals with the right mic and the right preamp and the right compressor for the vocal chain. Other than that, I'm going to use beats, samples, or whatever, right there in the MPC. But if I'm doing something like the Christmas album I did, where I'm using recording string sounds and upright bass sounds and piano sound, I'm running it through a console because that needs a type of sound, and the console provides that. So let me get back to that. It said, okay, let me go back to I was starting at Andrew. Let me see, DJ Victor's. But I believe you can get more life out of music when you stop. Yeah, when you stop looking for. You're right. Okay, let me go back to Busy. She said, I got all love for the reserves. He's laughing. I had mixed reviews when I was in the reserves. And it's kind of why I went back after. I initially went to reserves because I didn't want to lose my Army time, but it didn't allow me. If I was full active duty, I could not have gotten with this friend of mine who owned a record label, independent record label, got into the studio, did our album, and it went where it went. It got, and it did well. We made Billboard, and we got a lot. But the reserves, depends on the reserve unit, because I got my mix. That's why after the whole music thing didn't go, after my time with the record label and being in the industry and all that for a short amount of time, I went back on active duty, but I still kept doing my production stuff. So, but the Army, thank God, because that's my, that's my income, is my retirement. So, Busy said, I just bought some iZotope plugins, so powerful. And, plugins, and I'll say this real quickly on plugins. A lot of those, some plugins sound different. Some plugins are modeled well, some are not so modeled well. But for the most part, whether you decide to go with iZotope or you Soundtoys, Waves, Slate, UAD, because everyone has biased opinions on plugin companies. To me, I'm not biased. I like anything that works. It just long as I'm not going to. There's some people there's one YouTuber says UAD plugins are the best plugins in the world. I'm like, it's like I say when people say Pro Tools is the best DAW in the world. Yeah, people are doing amazing stuff in FL Studio. People are doing amazing stuff in Reason. Studio One, Cakewalk, Reaper, and the list just goes on and on. There are people that are just hardcore Ableton Live users. So how are you going to raise that argument that Pro Tools is the best DAW in the world when people are doing all this off-the-chain stuff with these other DAWs? Even Mixcraft, 9, and I just can go on and Cubase. So, but there are people out there that will swivel down, man. You're not doing it unless you're in Pro Tools. I'm like, well, the record speak for itself. I already, if people watch my video, go back and watch where I did a track using Behringer and Cakewalk, just like people dog Behringer. Every company has equipment and gear that not everyone likes. You believe it or not, you would think, and I'll switch it, like you would think, as so many people say, yeah, I love an LA2A on vocals. Then why does Chris Lord-Alge uses a Blue Stripe 1176 on vocals? Because vocals is a catered taste, and believe it or not, a lot of those gears or whatever, stuff like that, it's so minute in the differences. You can't tell that really the difference between a Blue Stripe, and they'll swivel down. I can hear Blue Stripe and but you gotta remember when these guys do these interviews and they talk about gears, because they're getting paid to make that gear sound like it will make a difference if you get it. This is why they do interviews like that. You'll see Chris Lord-Alge when they were doing the Black Lion, it's called Bluey, and he's like, I want to make sure it sounds like mine, because if it don't sound like mine, I'm not gonna put my, all this. When really, you think about think about the psychology behind marketing. No company is going to allow you to say anything that's going to get people to second guess gear they're trying to sell. It's like, so of course he's not going to say anything negative about Bluey. Yeah, they modeled my Blue Stripe because his Blue Stripe is an actual Universal Audio 1176. It's not the Black Lion. Bluey. It's the Universal Audio 1176. Of course he's being paid to endorse the Bluey. Like anyone, just like Andrew Sheps was being endorsed Waves plugins. So that's, and he's getting paid. A lot of these mixing engineers get paid to endorse. Like Sylvia Massey is getting paid by Warm Audio to endorse Warm Audio. That's why she's going to endorse Warm Audio microphones. It's the psychology behind it, but that's what makes it work, because they do it without you knowing they're doing it. Just like there's a private, a lot of YouTubers, they get paid to endorse gear. I say I don't get paid to endorse gear. So I'm gonna say it from a more realistic point of view. You're not going to hear significant differences between an LA2A compressor and a Warm Audio version of an LA2A compressor. You're not. not in the mix. You're not. There's too many other things going on besides the vocals. There's the drums going on. There's the bass. There's keys. There's synth sounds. There's background vocals. There's guitar. There's so much things going on. You can't. You have to have. You have to have dog ears to think that out. But he said, okay. So the next one says, he said, you'd be surprised what you can get out of audio thing, blindfold EQ. Yeah, just most of the times. This is the reason why old school mixer engineer, like I said, like to use gear like we do, because I'm listening more than I'm not trying to use my eyes to make decisions. I'm trying to have my ears to decision, because you think of it like this. Think of it like this. You make some music, and whatever software plugins, gear that you're using, and you play it for someone that knows nothing about gear, they have no interest in studios. Let's say you do some music and you go back and play for your family that's not into recording. Unless they know and they're right there in the studio with you and they are into gear like you are or whatever, you play it for them. They're not going to sit there and start naming, oh man, you used a USD plugin on the vocals there, but you used this isotope plugin on this, and you were going through a warm audio 76 on your drums. No one does that. They can't even hear. They don't even know. So what are they doing to gauge your music? They're listening to it. So that's a good analogy. So people don't know this. Consumers know nothing about gear. They don't know. What do you think about multi-tracks USB mixers? I don't really have a multi-track. Well, I don't have a whole lot of them. I bought this Behringer. It's called a Xenix. It's actually a USB audio interface as well. I think, really technically, because you'll see the digital mixers that can act like a audio interface. They're digital mixer, they're USB or whatever, or sometimes they connect by Ethernet. But for the most part, they are digital mixers that are doing is converting with your DAW. I think SSL has one that's, even API, there's a few out there that are analog that are USB. I think if you can get the analog in USB along with having it act as an audio interface, but yeah, take the advantages. And SSL made one called the Big Six. I have my reasons on why I think that's, I think that's a great idea. I think the price is just a ripoff, because they're letting you use the SSL name, but they're not giving you all the SSL features, but they're charging you. I think it was $3,000. They eventually had to drop the price, just like that Origin console. They started at 50,000, went to 6,000. They realized they had to drop the price. Anytime you see companies drop the price, because the margins aren't selling. But anyhow, I think a USB mixer is ideal if you want hybrid all in one. And if you want hybrid and all in one, there are limitations like, how many inputs and outputs, IOs, and auxiliary sends and limitations like that. But I think that's because you'll get the analog sound, yet you'll get the interface. But sometimes USB mixers, if they don't have DAW controls, sometimes you still have to use a separate DAW control. But that's just my opinion on it. And he said, I want a TOF audio console. Not sure how good they are. On the TOF, from what I've researched, TOF, the guy that engineered Triton consoles, who have a very reputable name, is the same engineer that engineered TOF, but they said instead of the components being Russian and German-made components, like some of the op amps, some of the capacitors, they were most of it came out of China. Now, when China really started manufacturing stuff, when they initially started doing it about 20-something years ago, we're talking with Apple and all these other companies that were going to China. What happened was they were using cheap components, whether it's tubes, IC chips or whatever, until China started building up their conglomerate as a company and trade. And it's crazy because China is a communist country, but you know, they're probably the most liberal. You know, it's not like hardcore communists like North Korea, but when they started blowing up in their market and start receiving the kind of billion-dollar revenue that they start bringing into the company and in their country, they start getting better components. So going back to Toft, because my explanations sometimes get long-winded. Toft basically is supposed to be, it's almost the best way I can describe it. If you're a bass player and you get a Fender American Jazz and then you get a Fender Squier, Toft is the Squier version of Triton. You know, Fender Squiers are not bad sounding guitars. They're just not the premium Fender ones. So the only really small differences would be the wood, maybe the rosewood neck or the bridge, the tuners, maybe even the pickups might be slightly better. But when you hear that distinctively between a Squier and an actual Fender, unless you have a trained ear to hear, oh, that's an ash body with a rosewood neck and a maple, you know, or whatever. And a lot of times, most musicians will just change the pickups and the strings and make a Squier sound like a top-notch guitar, bass or electric. That's the best way I can describe a Toft console. So I don't think that you will hear, if the worst case the scenario, I think any time when it comes to like consoles like a Toft, if they don't sound as good as a Triton, most of the time it's because the op amps in them are probably lower grade, like TLO 67s. You can always upgrade those, like the op amps to like 2540 op amps and give you a lot more headroom and a lot more, because that's part of your sound is the op amps in those consoles. The op amps is part of, it's kind of like, if you look at what really makes an API or Neve, really, believe it or not, is they have a little bit upgraded capacitors. The resistors are the same. Most of them still use electric little capacitors. Some of them use better grade film capacitors. But one of the key factors would be a better quality fader, a better quality buttons, better quality op amps, stuff like that. That's why Neve, because op amps could be $10 a piece versus a little 25 cents TLO 67 op amp. That's really the key difference, the sonically why Neve sound like it sounds in one instance. So if you got a Toft board and you want to make it sound like the Triton, like a Triton 78 series console, and it's got the cheaper op amps in it, just invest in maybe $1,000 worth of, you know, if you bought the Toft, because those will run about $6 to $8 grand. You might get them cheaper used, and invest in some op amps, and bam, now you're up and running. Okay, that was a long thought on the op amps. He said, my friend was a Marine. He hated the reserves. I get you. Yeah, and Marine Reserve compared to like Air Force, I can't talk. Like Air Force Reserve or Navy Reserve, Army Reserve, it's like, you know, because there's also the National Guard, like there's the Air National Guard. But, you know, when you're used to active duty, you're doing PT, and you're taking your MOS, your job skill, a lot more seriously. It seemed like the reserve was more lackluster. Like this, you know, I'm like, don't you know, reserves still have to deploy, but it was almost like a lackluster type of, you know, it was too relaxed, too civilianized. I'm like, you know, there's height and weight standards. There was a whole lot of factors. I'm like, so. Oh yeah, 7 months. He's laughing. You gotta have dog. Yeah, 7 something. He used to say, "You have God." Yeah, you do. You have to. And when it comes to trying to decipher whether a Clark Technique or my Lens 76s or an actual UA or a plugin, and when I watch people do these comparison videos, and I'm sitting there listening to, and they'll go back and forth, and you like, you like, and then they have to at the end of the comparison, like, well, I know that the differences are, you know, very, very, you know, it's very, very minute, or it's very, very, you know, just, you know, I know you can barely hear, but when they have to explain that, they know they can't even hear that. And you sum that up. You got this plug-in or Clark Technic or Lin 76 or Warm Audio or an actual UA 76 or whatever on a mix. You think you're going to hear that with everything going on in that mix? I'm talking about the effects, the delays, what's going on vocals, all the samples, the reverbs, all the sound, drums, the vocals, bass, keys, all this stuff going on. You think you're going to hear if that was 1176 or UA plugin or whatever? No, you're not. You're not. You're not. Not when you watch them solo just that piece of gear comparison, and you can barely hear them. Like I said, you have to have dog ears to like, oh yeah, that I can definitely distinctly hear the difference between the plug-in and a real piece. No, you're not. ET2 said the Army for my deployment screening, it said literally I can hear a mouse pissing on the the Army for the screening said literally I can hear a mouse pissing on cotton. Well, and I don't know if you know. I don't know. Like I said, I had 9 deployments, from the Gulf War all the way up to Afghanistan in 2008 because I was with the 101st. But actually, I didn't really, I was in Kosovo and Bosnia. What I liked about, like when I was in Bosnia, I'm talking about the Army for a second, is Bosnia, even though the mess hall, we call mess hall or DFAC, they only had certain hours. They would have morning, you had breakfast, you had lunch and dinner, then they would have midnight chow. But you could still go in the chow hall any time of the day because they would still have sandwiches, ice cream, whatever. You could grab something, take it back to your tent or whatever you were staying at. You stayed in CHUs, container handling units, or CHUs, or if you stayed in whatever. But Bosnia, they built these wooden barracks. So we stayed in these wooden barracks. But I didn't really have a bad experience in my deployments, other than like Iraq. Iraq was kind of, when I landed in Iraq, I was at Spiker. We wasn't there 2 hours, and of course a mortar hit. So, but we're talking about Iraq. There was IEDs, and Iraq was crazy. But I still enjoyed it because it seemed like the DFAC or the dining facility or the mess hall, it seemed like the food was better than eating at the DFACs on the base. Because when I ate in the DFAC sometime. I ate in the DFAC sometimes, but most of the time I would eat at home or I would eat the PX, or I would just eat off post. So anyhow, moving on from the Army. So do you go to NAM? No, actually, I don't go to NAM. I'm not a member of NAM. I am a member of AES, Audio Engineering Society, because a lot of the same stuff that they show at the NAMs be overcrowded to me compared to the Audio Engineering Society. They show the same gear, at NAMs that they do Audio Engineering Society. And I can go there and find out if they got the latest, compressor, the latest, if they have the latest, preamp or microphone or cable, whatever they're showing. They're going to show that same stuff at the AES. So, and AES doesn't require all these, these extensive memberships to only be a member. It's all, it's kind of like, it's like when you're doing your music, you need to be either as a, performing artist, you need to be either registered with BMI or ASCAP, even though there's CSAC, but CSAC got this crazy restricted membership. I'm like, why do I need to be a member of CSAC when I can get BMI or ASCAP to monitor my music for my royalties? So that's why I don't go to NAMs. Even though NAMs can be exciting, NAMs can be overcrowded to me. Plus, you can watch, sometimes a lot of guys, they'll upload their experience to go to NAM, and NAMs, you're going to a NAM is probably doesn't do it justice trying to watch it on video because there's so many vendors there. But half the time for the NAM, if you're interested in certain products, you can just go to their website and see what new products they got. Yeah, and maybe I'm just using that excuse not to be a NAM member, But like I said, I can find out the same gear at an AES show. So that's why. ET2 man, nah man, I'm looking to go to the network route with AVD or Dante. Yeah, audio. If you don't know what AVB stands for, AVB stands for audio video bridge. Or Dante. Yeah, Dante. Dante. Or even that, because there's MADI too, or MADI, or how you want to pronounce it, or AES, or how you want to route multiple inputs and outs. Whether you're going to route it to a stage box or whatever, but those are also gives you a lot more channel flexibility than, because ADAT live pipe, you can only do 8 channels at a time. That's why they only do in groups of 8. I'm thinking I'm undergoing my 8 96-point patch bays and doing network AD instead. I'm not sure about it being high res. I think especially like my Interlope can do all those IOs to increase your input and output. I think that's beneficial to try it that way because, like, for example, at our church, we don't have snakes anymore. We have Cat 5. And I think that it's a lot more efficient. I haven't seen any hiccups. Running that many channels on us. It just, to me, it seemed like it would make more sense now that you would think by now studios would converted a lot of their systems, because old studios would have tie lines and patch panels, and those patch panels and tie lines are running by a lot of extensive cable, and that's a lot of cable to go into the control room for the live room with using a patch panel and tie lines. But the technology wasn't there then. We didn't have AVB or Dante or MADI and AES and all that like we got now. So you would think a lot of these would upgrade to that system. One, it's going to save on cabling. Two, how I think it's a lot more efficient. Depends, especially as how well your processing your converter is. But I never really tried that myself. Because I don't have a ton of stuff that I need. I don't have a ton of channels like going to a stage or a live room to do that, because it's in my house. I don't have a live room set up like that. But that, I think I would go an AVB or Dante route to do a lot more IO if I was going to do a large set, especially an orchestra, over trying to run this large snake routing it through the walls and all these tons of cables. Cables can be expensive, and cables can become a nightmare, especially when they start to fail. Busy says, I'm trying to get the SSL2 for my home studio. Like I said, I know about it because I'm always researching gear. I just never used it. I'm sure it's great as a controller and a good piece, but I don't know anything about it. So I hope it works out. If you try it, I hope that works out. I'm sure it's pretty good. SSL make a lot of good stuff. It says, but I always read about Lion Audio and they sound so fancy. I don't know. Sometimes you got to get these companies and do 30-day trials or whatever, or see what they say. ET2 says, yeah, there's a modification house that has a service you can send in your channel scripts and buses to get upgraded op amps and pass, and it converts my Soundcraft Ghost for like $6,000 though. Yeah, see, do you want to just $6,000? It's kind of like, is it worth it? I think sonically is worth it. It's a matter of budget wise. Layback Beats Composer said, did you claim VA disability afterward? Oh yeah, I'm 90%. I'm 90%. So yep. Yeah, trying to get that last 10% to be 100% is always the battle for anyone, but I'm 90%. I start off at 70, and they increased me to 90. So, but I'm 90. I am 90%. My actually combined rate of 93%. Can you believe that? I need another 20% on a claim to get it to 95% to get me 100% full retirement, which is a big difference between 90 and 100% as far as the disability pay. But yeah, so. Oh, you retire. Me too, man. Retired 2011. Yeah, so you retired 2 years before I did. He said I retired E5 Navy. I retired E7. I was a sergeant first class when I retired. E7. But I get it, and I can understand. You know, here's the thing. Here's one thing I do know about the Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force is and I just feel bad because those are great branches. The Navy. My sister was in the Navy. My uncle was Marine. You know, most of my family that was in the military was Army. Y'all promotion system. You know, I know they had to take a test. Navy take a test. Air Force take a test. But y'all promotion system, man. You know, they got this thing in the Navy called P&A, Pass Not Advance. I would hate to be a rate. Like, let's say, and I get it, whether you're a boatswain's mate or let's say you're, AT1 or whatever. I get it. Sometimes the promotion is just because their promotion is a little different in the Army. Army, we go to promotion boards. You know, we go to promotion board for E5, promotion board for E6. All we gotta do is make points. We make points, we make cutoff, we get pinned. But our E7 boards and above is centralized. They don't do DA photos no more. We had to do a DA photo, send in your photo, then your records are voted on by a centralized promotion board by sergeant majors and all that. But the Army, because it is the biggest, has a better advancement program. Doesn't necessarily mean that the jobs in the Navy or the Air Force, some people, I've heard this, and this is so crazy. I'll show people I used to be an Army recruiter. I used to laugh at this statement, right? This is the business cards I used to pass out when I was an Army recruiter, right? This is one of my Army recruiters. I used to pass them out when I was doing recruiting duty. I would hear people sit there and say, I can get in the Air Force, or anyone get in the Marine Corps, the Navy, or anyone get in the Army. I was in the Air Force. Air Force, like I scored higher on the ASVAB, so I get in the Navy. And I tell myself, these people are so stupid. They don't understand when you go to MEPS to take the ASVAB. It's the same ASVAB. It's at the lab. I'm like, I scored higher on the Air Force for the Air Force. You mean so the scores that you got for the Air Force are the exact same scores we use for the Army. We use the exact same test. It's just that our jobs and our branch is different. So if you scored an 80 QT on the ASVAB for the Air Force, the 80 QT is the same score for the Army or the Navy or the Coast Guard. It's so hilarious to me. But these people, because it's the stereotype that people think people in the Air Force are smarter than the Navy, than the Army, than the Marine Corps. They try to scale it, not realizing every branch have high skill to stupid jobs. It's kind of like in the Navy, if you were like air traffic control or in Navy intelligence, you were smarter than the boatswain's mate. No, that was just the rate that the boatsman, it's like, well, the boatsman there must be the stupid. All they got to do is paint the ship and no. So anyhow, let me get off the military because this is supposed to be about the music. But I've always found that funny when people, it's almost like you're trying to one up to make yourself feel better than trying to make yourself by belittling someone else to make yourself feel better, which is really that's an insecurity thing. But anyhow, let me read the next question. So Jeffrey Scofield said, love the way you make simple videos, easy to learn from. Will you do teaching on how to bring clarity to your mic? Actually, let me write that down because people always suggest videos and I say I'll do it and I don't do it because I forget to do it. So let me write that down. Let me write it down somewhere. I know I got something I can write on. Yeah, I can do a mic and clarity video. That ain't right on that. A mic, it says mic, right. There we go. Mic and clarity video. Okay. I'll do a video on that. So that way, you can get it. But I'm going to tell you something that I have templates up here. I'll bring them down. This made me look a little busy, but you can print this off the internet. I'll give you some templates to start with to help you when you're trying to EQ certain instruments, certain vocals, drums and all that. There are areas of frequencies that you want to stay in for like vocals, drums, stuff like that. So this is easy to print off. There's a bunch of templates. I started with those. I started with like templates. Like there's another. This one came out of the back. I got it taped up here because I use it. I constantly use it because it made sense. It started making my mixes and everything else sound so much better. And I'll give you a quick example of it's telling you where to cut and where to boost on your frequencies. Like, for example, and this actually came out of my owner's manual. I cut it out. The owner's manual of my Alesis 3630 compressor. That's a compressor that in the industry was considered a cheap. I'm like, oh, really? If they're that cheap, let me tell you how smart these guys were on this Alesis 3630. They gave you reasons how to set up your EQ. And I'll give you an example. It says human voice, what to cut. The best way to cut, they want you to cut. When I say cut, think of your EQ section, if you're on a mixer at the 12 o'clock position. Or if you see a plug-in, you see that middle, they usually put that middle line on your plug-in. It's a middle line. The middle line, anything below the middle line is cutting. Anything above the middle line, that what we call unity, zero gain unity, you're boosting. So it says what the best thing to do to cut is to cut. They want you to cut 7K. Why would you cut that? To get rid of that sibilance. Where to boost 8K. Why? It presents a bigger sound to that frequency of the vocals. Another place to cut would be 2K. Why? To get rid of that mid-range shrill that you hear. Where you want to boost is 3K or above to present clarity to the vocals. And another place where you want to cut on vocals would be 1K. Why? To get rid of that nasally sounding sound around that frequency. You want to get rid of that nasal sound. Now, where you want to boost for vocals, we're around 200 to 400 to create a little bit more body. So, and then 80 hertz. You want to cut 80 hertz so you don't get that's why we put a pop filter in front of the microphone. You want to get rid of P's and B's that's going to boost your speaker whenever someone's, so that's an example of how you want to set frequencies for vocals. And that is a good start. And then from there, you just kind of, this is why the Pultec EQ is such a popular EQ. It's used to do that for certain things like bass, vocals, and like pianos, certain guitars, and things like that. Just like a sonic maximizer or exciter or pieces of gear to put on some of your chain to get rid of those issues in frequency. That's just a good reference, and I use it. It works. Trust me, it works. So now let me see. Now, DJ said, what headphones do you use, or your thoughts on headphones? I actually have some simple headphones. They sound good for me. These are the Sennheiser HD 201s. They're very affordable. They work. I don't have super expensive headphones, but these are the Sennheiser HD 201s. I got about 5 of them. I'm going to get 4 or 5 more because I don't have an extreme vocal booth. Because when I'm recording vocals in here, I turn everything on down, and I put on the headphones, and I have my singer put on the headphones. So that way, nothing's being picked up. So the room itself is actually acting as a vocal booth. This is a very big control room vocal booth. But that's what I do. Eventually, when I get a new house and I find a home that I'm going to actually be able to build a control room, vocal booth, and live room, then we'll see. But that's the headphones I use. So let me see. And Bridget says cable breaks so easy too. Crying on this. Yeah, and believe it or not, the cheaper cables, like if you have Megami cables, they're better durable cable versus a Hosa. Hosa cables are you know, and I'm guilty. I got quite a fair bit of codes of cables, but I wasn't super knowledgeable on cables. Just like I wasn't super knowledgeable on ground systems. So a good friend of mine started talking about ground systems. When he started talking about ground systems and everything else, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that, because every studio I've been in was already wired. You can't see these wires. They were already wired. Everything was all clean and efficient. So you don't know the wiring and cabling they're using because it's all hidden. That stuff is under the floor and the wall. So I wasn't really aware of cable. I just thought you just go about, you know, as long as I knew about balanced and unbalanced, but I wasn't about quality. And do cables, do they impact even the frequency of stuff? Yes, they actually do. So cables do matter. So that's why I'm in advance of upgrading my cables as well. So ET said, my studio at my house looks like yours, but I have a piano room and drum room and main editing console room. Do you know if those matrix can reach 32-bit at 192K? That I don't know. I know that I don't think that the cabling for 192 hertz, whether you're, let's say you say your drum room or mic room, depends on how the quality cable is. But I think the 192 hertz is really more efficient for it. And the 32-bit is more of how well your PC or your Mac can process that sampling rate. You know, it really, that's the key piece, is the PC or the Mac, more than is, I think, the distance of the cabling. I think if you just use high quality cables that's reaching your piano or drum room, that's going to make a difference in the quality of the sound, just high quality cables, more than it is the actual what settings you have on your interface going into your DAW, and what your DAW is set as far as it's if your DAW is set it to process 192 and 32-bit. But that's just my thought. I'm not a super expert on that, but that's just what I'm thinking. But I appreciate your studio looking like mine, so you understand. So ET2 said, you understand why if you're set like mine, you understand why you're doing it. ET said, dude, go DAV and get your retirement back from your combat duty instead of just VA disbursement. I'm working on it, believe it or not. I'm 92, I'm combined 93%. I'm working on it. I know I'll get it. I'll get it. Said for sure. Dude, it took me 6 years ago from E4 to E5. Oh, and I was a satellite communications tech with White House Yankee, White House clearance. Yeah, the TS. Yep. How people had to retire for you to advance. Yeah, because the Navy, you look at the Army, 600,000 people, Navy, 300,000, Air Force, 250,000, Marine Corps, about just under 100,000. So the advancements for us was easier. So I can get it. I totally get it. I run across all branches when I'm, whether you retire Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army. And obviously, you guys always have higher retirement. Yeah, because we're bigger. We have more MOSs. There's just a lot more in the Army. But the Army's designed that way because we're a land-based, But the Navy is more fleet. They operate off of fleets. So and fleet commands. So that's there's just not as many. It's kind of like, really, if you look at the Navy, the only true, other than being whether you've been on boat crews, like special boat crews, or the only combat element other than special boat crews and stuff like that for Navy would be Navy SEALs. But there's only like 5,000 of them. That's why it's so hard to run across a Navy SEAL. That's their only true land-based combat operation for the Navy, is their spec warfare. I don't want to get, like I said, I'm getting back into the military stuff. I'm trying to get back to but I get it. What I mean? My jobs in the Army, when I was Apache Tech helicopter systems repair. I worked on all the avionics for Apache helicopters. I also was in the military intelligence branch. So I totally get it when being front, as far as the promotions. Laid Back Beats Composer says, try going to your local veterans at VSO and do a secondary claim to get 100. Actually, that's some of the secondary claims, like radiculopathy, what I got for upper and lower, is how I got a lot of my stuff to go from, plus, tinnitus and I'm already had 50% for sleep apnea. But a lot of that's how it got it. You go from 70 to 90. And from secondary is brought up, but you know how that goes when they rate it. It's kind of like you still need another 70, 80% to get at least 10% for the pay. It's off the chain. But trust me, I'm working on it. Don't think that I'm not working on it. Seven Sun Music said, thank you, man. I'm counting on it. I have a ribbon mic, Lightroom. Yeah, and you know what? Ribbon mics are a hidden secret. I had to talk about mics, so that's why I wrote it down. I wrote it down about mics and stuff like that. So trying to go to yeah, let me see. Let me see. I did a live sound and production studio work on the USS Kennedy. Oh yeah, the US Kennedy. I think that's I think US Kennedy. I don't know which fleet. I don't know if y'all were Pacific or Atlantic. Like I said, I'm not a Navy. I was Army, but I heard of the USS Kennedy carrier. It was mad fun to decommission. Oh, they decommissioned it, so that means it's at the bottom of the Atlantic now. Do you do audio in the military or after? I did it in my past time when I wasn't doing my job because I was playing in bands and I was doing my own production work in my home and I was doing personal projects on the side. I never did it as part of main thing. Even though every now and then when we have like a ceremony, they would have an audio guy that was setting some speakers because the CG, the colonel or the battalion commander or the sergeant major wanted to speak, whatever, or stuff like that. But I never did that as part of my job. I let, because it didn't require, military don't require to have these significated like you were proving on a. Now I did do a thing called the Army Entertainment, and I was playing in the band called the USA Express where we had sound systems and see the concert series work and all that. So that's a whole different. That's the concert series, basically the big stage, like if it was it's one of those stage setups as if Mary J. Blige and Boys and Men were performing. I get a chance to do that, but that's a different video. So David Gibson, The Art of Mixing, great book, Jeffrey, check it out. I actually have some stuff I recommend. Let me see up here as well. I had this is recording and mixing vocals. And this one is sound advice on mastering. And then, of course, this is called Mike Singer's Mixing Secrets as well. But I'm open to, you said David Gibson, I'm open to stuff like that. Also, if you want to get into music industry, I had a book, that I was recommend people to check out All About the Music Industry by Donald Prey. He was a music lawyer. But I do have something, this is just a few other books I recommend, especially mixing and all that. So if you're into this, I do the same thing. I read them. You can never stop learning in this. So Jeffrey had to use. Jeffrey said I had to try to use side chain and ducking, or riding instead of limiter. Also, multi-band compressors, so the bass velocity doesn't affect the mid-range power. I actually have a multi-band compressor myself. It's the Studio Dominator. It's in the rack right here. It's called a Studio Dominator. It's a multi-band compressor. It's another one of those hidden secrets, but a multi-band compression. And Greg Wales, another mixing engineer, and as well as there's a couple other mixing engineers that are just drawing a blank on them, are adamant about putting a multi-band compressor on your master bus, because you're compressing multiple frequencies that helps eliminate problems. So. Thank you for all the free game, man. We gotta love you for that. I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm here. That's why I've created the channel. I'm here to try to help. I hated that I deleted a lot of my other videos because I started off talking about. I made a video about, and it gained, I think I had 20,000 views or more, maybe 40, 50,000. And I hate it because YouTube said they were going to go into this, start killing YouTube channel. This is a couple of years ago. And of course, they didn't do it. About killing YouTube channels if your stuff wasn't about kids or targeting kids and all this other stuff, and they want to shut you down and all this other stuff, and they didn't do it. But my first video was about the basically the real truth about the music industry, because like I said, when I was labeling our group, I learned about the music industry and the corruption about it back in the 90s, and that was the reason why I started the channel. Then I also started the channel, start teaching. I was teaching songs and theory and how to play chords and how to make your music more interesting, because there are a lot of people that they get stuck with playing certain chords and don't realize you can expand. I was doing videos like how to show people how to play songs, and I wish I hadn't deleted those videos. So I think I need to bring those back. Let me see what else. Man, you got to switch them cans to in-ear monitors. You get fast response in eardrums legit, and you can catch tunes more accurately due to multiple diverse and yeah. My church, we got in-ear monitors. I have to think about that. I'll say, and then we said you need a back to the music cutaway. Yeah, probably do. Will you be posting your new music on here or on your SoundCloud? Probably both. Most likely both. I'm going to incorporate so you can actually start hearing me doing live stuff even through the console, so people can hear it. That's because I can do that using my interface. I can use that through the envelope. I just need to turn the gear on and set it up so you can actually hear it in the way, so you can hear it in person. Excuse me. So ET said, dude, I was saying because you're retired plus combat, the DV can help you get back your DADO as a kicker to your VA rather than being retired as a non-combat, so you can get over 100% essentially. I'm gonna take that into account. I'm gonna, like I said, I got a person I'm working with that helped me get. He helped me get from 70 to 90, and got it now. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna get back with him, and I'm gonna post that because some of the stuff I got that could have been over 100 got denied. So we'll, I'm working on it. Trust me, I'm working on it. I know a lot of people that are 100%. They think that we that maybe 90 or 80 some aren't trying. Trust me, we're trying, but the VA is very, what the VA. Sometimes it can be easier for some people than how they did it than others, especially on the back end or coming up. But trust me, I'm working on it. I'm going to get 100%. So it's been an hour and 42 minutes. I need to go get something to eat because I only want to do this podcast for an hour, but you guys are so great. You guys are awesome that watch the channel and interact. We got some veterans here, some great engineers, some musicians, and so forth. Always great. I love the kick in. But I need to get something to eat because I can be on here forever, and people will see these podcasts and there's 142 hour 40 minutes. I'm not watching that. But I really do appreciate everyone chiming in, and it's been great. I really do appreciate everyone. Like I said, this was just going to be a Q&A and answer thing. And I really do appreciate that. So I gotta go. Yes, I'll answer. Yeah. One last thing, I'm happy you mentioned corruption, dude. I think God just sent me out of the military for the industry, graduating from music school and GI Bill. It sucks. I can't work, but he knows. Yeah, the music is corrupt. Everyone knows that. This is the reason why thank God we can do this on our own and don't need a record label. I got my thoughts on record labels, even though record labels can help you, but they are, it's a ton. That's all, that's a video. Just go and do real truth about the music industry. There's tons of them on YouTube. And I might bring one mine's back again. But once again, I thank everyone. Thanks, Bizet, DJ Victor, ET2, everyone, E Cool J, L Cool J, Jeffrey. I mean, everyone that was, chiming in. I really do appreciate y'all sticking around. Seven Sun Music, all of y'all for sticking around. If I forgot somebody, charge to my heart, not my head. And we're gonna see you next time. But I need to get out here because I'm gonna die. Well, I'm not gonna die. I'm just hungry. So thank you, and I appreciate. Thank y'all with so much great plugins today. Do you think gear is more of a psychological effect? Yeah, it works, but it is because it's an emulation of real gear. It's not real gear; it's software. Because our computers, they just have a CPU, RAM, and there's no tubes or transformers in it or op amps. But anyhow, but the psychological effect is the key, right? Whether it's a real piece of gear, can you fool people with the real gear, or can you fool people with the plug-in? Most people can't tell the difference. That's the overall idea of plugins. So anyhow, Thanks for watching. And thanks. And I'll see y'all next time. We'll see y'all again. Thanks so much, dog. Like I said, I got to go. Thanks again. And we'll see you next time. I'm going to do these more because 2024. I'm going to do these a lot more because this is better for the channel to interact with people. You know. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Y'all have a great one.